Good morning, friends, and thank you very much for joining me for this important topic today. I thank you for caring enough to give me a few minutes of your time today. You may not be watching live, and that's great. I hope that lots of people will be able to see this video after it's finished and after I will post it in a couple of different places. During the video, if you are joining me live, I'm not going to respond to any comments because I have a very distracted brain, and I think my message is really important and I don't want to get distracted and get off topic. The other thing I wanted to say is I will be referring to my notes a little more than I usually do. Usually I just kind of have a few things written down and talk mostly off the cuff, but I've got notes today because, again, I think this message is really important, and I'm very eager to share all my thoughts with you about this. So I am Christine. I'm the owner and operator of Wishy Washy Cloth, which provides women with really fun reusable menstrual products. And even though I only sell my products to women in Canada currently, I believe that our attitudes toward menstruation extend far outside of just our country, and we're going to talk about that this morning. So I've been thinking a lot lately about why I do what I do. Why does it matter if we use sustainable menstrual care? Why do our attitudes about menstruation matter? In this past fall, I met a really wonderful lady that I've gotten to know a little bit, and she told me about her experience as a missionary in Uganda, where she's done missions work several times. She goes back and forth to Uganda to help the people there as much as she can. And when she was there, she found a culture where young girls have absolutely nothing there to deal with their menstrual cycles. They don't have any pads, disposable or not. They don't have cups. They don't have tampons. They don't have any $40 period underwear. They have nothing to deal with their menstrual cycles. So what happens? Well, once a month, 1 week a month, or 25%-ish of the time, these girls would be forced to stay home from school. And at home, they would bleed on cardboard or corn husks or whatever they managed to find laying around. In desperation, some of the girls would choose to use things like bits of old, dirty mattresses, the insides of mattresses, which they would wear internally. You can only imagine what effect this would have on these young girls to be using pieces of dirty mattress worn internally. Can you even imagine that, living in the country that we are privileged to live in today, that there are women here that are forced to do things like this for their periods? So not only are bits of old dirty mattress ineffective, but they cause infections. Young girls can literally die from using this type of thing. That's very serious. So say that she doesn't die. Say that she just stays home from school. So the result, these girls are missing about a quarter of their school. Missing school leads to a lack of education, which leads to a lack of usable skills so that she can support herself. And this necessitates her getting married very young and very early in order to have a way to support herself and to take pressure off her family. And this leads to a whole bunch of babies really early on. And I'm pro baby. I have 9 of them myself. So it's not a comment on the size of someone's family. It's a comment on the fact that this is something that then leads into the cycle of poverty, just feeds right back into that cycle. And then the whole thing starts again with her own daughters. They don't have a way to deal with their menstrual cycles. They stay at home. They bleed on cardboard. They miss school. They get infections, whatever. The cycle just keeps on going and going. So did you catch that? That this young woman's lack of solutions for her menstrual cycle actually contributes to another cycle, the cycle of poverty. Isn't that absolutely incredible? Why is this happening? Well, I have some ideas. So let's start to unpack this. I have noticed that women who are my customers and other women who in my life who use sustainable or reusable menstrual care often have a healthier and more relaxed and open attitude toward menstruation. So I was wondering why this was. Was it the result or the cause of their choosing reusable menstrual care? I don't know. I actually have no idea. But here's what I see. Disposable menstrual products allow us to hide menstruation or pretend that it doesn't exist. Once a month, we buy products that we use once, and we wrap them up, often in plastic. So we wrap them up and we hide them away in the garbage. So we're hiding the evidence that anyone in this household has had menstrual flow. Does this smack of some kind of crime to you? Hiding evidence? It, at least to me, speaks of shame. If your child has a nosebleed at your house and you need to use a tissue or piece of toilet paper to deal with it, do you wrap that up in a piece of plastic before you put it in the garbage so that no one can see the evidence of what happened? Of course not. There's no shame in having a nosebleed. So why is there shame in having a menstrual cycle? Good question. Every month, so what is a menstrual cycle? Let's talk about this first. Every month, a woman's body prepares her womb to support new life by growing a soft and nourishing lining for that baby to attach to and to grow on. If no pregnancy occurs, this lining just sloughs away in order to make sure that the womb always has a fresh new lining every month for any possible baby that could come along. It's like changing the linens on a bed. Even more, it's like changing the linens on an unused guest bed so that any possible guest at any time is going to have the absolute freshest bedding possible. Beautiful. So with regards to menstruation, this is actually amazing and miraculous. Without this uterine lining and the function of menstruation, our human race would cease to exist. I mean it. They would cease to exist. We need menstruation in order to continue our population. This, my friends, is very powerful. But here we are, a point in time where the menstrual cycle is a source of shame. This miraculous and normal event, which has literally supported every human life to ever come on our planet, this normal function is seen as contaminated and dirty. This makes me really angry. Whose fault are these attitudes? Well, you know what? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. And why doesn't it matter? Well, friends, our anger is a signal that something is wrong and that something needs attention. That's what anger is best used for. A signal. Something's wrong, something needs attention. Anger is also our power to take action. So when we blame, we misuse our anger and it becomes bitterness and it stops us from acting. Why does it stop us from acting? Because when we blame, we are deferring our responsibility to someone else. So we don't have to do anything about it because someone else needs to do something about it. It is someone else's fault. Here's the reality, and it's not a really nice truth to face, but it's the truth, and truth is empowering. The reality is we are all responsible. Blaming men, blaming industry does no good because this is a long-standing inherited problem. And friends, like it or not, we women are contributing to it with our own attitudes and the way that we deal with our own menstrual cycles, the way that we talk about our own menstrual cycles. So how can it possibly matter what I think about menstruation? Just me. What does it matter what I think about it? It matters because, like it or not, our children are watching and the world is watching. In the West, we are always being watched. And we're being watched especially by young people living in poverty or living in areas that don't have everything that we have. We are being watched by them, and many of these young people are aspiring to be just like us. That's a huge responsibility. What I think affects what my children think. What my children think affects what my whole household thinks. What my household thinks affects what my country thinks. And that creates a culture. And it is that culture that affects what the world thinks. my own attitudes, and those are really the only ones that I can control, they trickle down to affect the attitudes of the entire world. This is not just about me and what I think. This is about the effect on the whole world. And friends, while unhealthy or shameful attitudes toward menstruation may not be life or death for you or me here in the West, it can mean life or death for young women around the world. Do you remember that story I told a few minutes ago about that young woman wearing a dirty piece of old mattress internally and dying because of an infection from that? Our attitudes affect that young girl. Our own personal attitudes, very powerful and very amazing. So if our attitudes, if my own personal attitude declares menstruation as shameful or dirty, that affects that young woman far away. So can we not do better as a culture than this? Can we not do better for ourselves, our daughters, our sisters around the world? Can we not do better for our sons and our husbands? Can we not do better for our planet, suffering under the weight of garbage created by our attempt to hide the evidence of menstruation? We can. So here's a few ideas. Number one, we must stop the blaming. We have to stop blaming men. We have to stop blaming industry because, as I shared, blaming prevents us from taking action. So that action cannot include hating on people. Hating does nothing. In fact, men are just as much victims of this attitude that has been passed down to us. It has been taught to us. It's been all we've ever known. And we are going to be the ones that will change those attitudes for the future and change those attitudes for the world. You will, and I will. You can only change yourself. As I shared earlier, yourself matters, and your attitude is like a ripple, like a pebble being dropped in a lake and rippling out bigger and bigger and bigger, and it matters very, very much. So, some ideas about how to change attitudes. We can talk to our children early. I highly recommend this. If you are a parent or you're a teacher or someone, maybe you're an auntie, you're someone that spends a lot of time with little people, I encourage you to talk to them about periods early before they are tainted by these attitudes that have been passed down to us and they realize that there's anything that people are ashamed of or anything that makes them squirm. Talk to them nice and early. It is not it's not too early to talk to a 3-year-old about it. Listen, friends, children will literally believe anything we tell them. If I was to call my 2.5-year-old up here right now and tell him that a unicorn was coming to visit us later this afternoon, he's going to believe me. He'll be out watching for that unicorn after lunch to show up in our driveway. So our children are open books right now. Eventually, they're going to have their own attitudes, their own thoughts, and they do even now a little bit. But now is our chance to put those ideas into them formatively that are going to contribute to their future health. And trust me, learning to think, boys and girls, learning to think about menstruation being a healthy and normal thing is going to contribute to their mental and emotional health later on. And they then can be the ones that are going to take those attitudes out and further change the world. Interestingly, on this topic, about 3 years ago, I found out I was expecting another baby. It was a big, big, big shock, to say the least, but that's another story. So we were excited-ish. Well, I wasn't excited right away, but I was excited later, and I love him to death now, and I'm really glad that he came into our world. Anyways, when I was pregnant with him, I had my last child before that was about 4.5, and he started to have questions about where babies came from. And everything in me wanted to say, well, we'll talk about that when you're older, or to give him some pat answer. But I thought to myself about this idea that little kids are open books. They'll believe anything we say, and they believe it without batting an eye. Again, if I tell my kid that a unicorn is coming to visit us later, he's not going to bat an eye. And so I thought to myself, I'm just gonna answer him. I'll just tell him right out, where do babies come from? And I told him the whole deal. And he just said, oh, okay, no big deal. And so then that big conversation was over because I answered his questions in a truthful way when he was really little, and it was no big deal. The same can be true of menstruation. If you are going to the bathroom to change your pad, you don't need to bring your 3-year-old in there. I'm not suggesting that. But you can tell them what you're doing. Oh, just got to go change my pad. And you can tell them, well, it's a baby nest. Use whatever words you want, but talk about it early before it gets to be a big deal for them. And then they can grow up with the gift that you will give them of knowing that it is normal. It's not a gigantic deal, and it's a healthy thing to talk about. It's open for discussion, and we're not going to make a massive, big, shameful deal about it when a woman is going to the washroom to change her pad. So let's see. So what do we need to say? Well, I am not one for thinking that we need to elevate menstruation to some kind of sensational event worthy of worship. I don't think that we need to make period art or write poems about menstruation. If that's your thing, bless your hearts. No offense intended. That's not my thing. Because I don't think getting your period is really that great. It's miraculous, but it's not really awesome to have it, if you know what I mean. So, but can't we just normalize it? Can't we just make it a normal thing, like taking a shower or combing your hair, brushing your teeth? It's part of self-care. Something that happens, we take care of ourselves, done. It's just a healthy, normal thing. Okay, so moving on. So you haven't talked to your little kid. No big deal. I had lots of kids I didn't talk to about it either. So now you have preteens or teens. What I would suggest here again is actually that you focus on small comments, small conversations, and avoid those gigantic big talks where we're going to sit down and we're going to talk through all these details, unless your teen happens to initiate it. And if they do, wonderful. That's great that you have that kind of relationship with your teen where you can talk about these things openly, and I applaud that, and I'm so glad for that. But for other parent and teen or preteen combinations, maybe you don't have that kind of relationship, or you just haven't talked about it yet. So concentrate on the small conversations and small comments here and there, because teens are very easily weirded out. If you introduce it like some big giant topic, then it will signal to your teen that it's sorry, let me look at my notes. So it'll signal to your teen that it's not a normal topic, that it's something scary, and it immediately puts their back up. So we want to keep it short and light to signal that this is not a topic with stigma, just an everyday thing. We'll talk about it in little bits. We do, as I said with the shower example, we don't sit down and have giant conversations about showers. So another option for you would be that allowing your daughter to choose her own reusables before she starts cycling can also help pave a way for normalizing menstruation. That won't work for all girls, but that can be one helpful thing. So let her choose some pads for herself and have them ready for her so that she knows here they are in the cupboard. Talk through what's going to happen. What are you going to do with them when she uses them? I don't want to embarrass any of my daughters, but I do have one daughter that was finding, she loves using reusables, but she was finding actually dealing with them a bit of a challenge. So I said, you know what? You stick them in a bag during your cycle and then just put the bag in my bathroom when you're done, and I will take care of them for you. So that could be an option for you. You could talk to your teens about, okay, you're just going to use these. You're going to put them in your wet bag, and then you can leave them in mom's bathroom or wherever you leave them, or just let you know that they're there to be washed. Or you could talk through how to take care of them. That's certainly a conversation that needs to happen at some point as well. But that's a couple of things. Another option for normalizing menstruation is to get involved with organizations that provide direct support to women in third world countries that don't have a way to properly deal with their menstruation. So one example is the organization called Days for Girls. They sew thousands of pads and provide women also with underwear. Actually, a lot of women in third world countries, especially hot places, they don't actually have underwear. So there's nothing to attach the pad to. So these organizations, they sew kits and they have them delivered, and they provide a direct impact for those young girls who need some products for their menstruation. You can get involved with Days for Girls by donating. You can find there are local chapters all over the place. You can just look them up on the internet, find a local chapter. If you don't sew, then great, go and help them to cut. Bring your teen daughters, if you have daughters, bring your nieces, bring young people with you, because making these products for women from other countries who are in need of them, it provides a really natural way to talk about menstruation. And it's a great way to feel the impact of your decisions, and also to use what we've been given. We've been given so much here. We've been given, no matter how poor you feel here, we have been given lots of money in this country. We have been given lots of power. As I said, the world is watching us. And so we can use that to directly impact these young women. Sorry, didn't enunciate very well. Operation Christmas Child. They're the ones that do the shoe boxes every Christmas, and those are delivered all over the world. They will accept new reusable menstrual pads, and so that would be an option for you as well. That it's a point of conversation for your young kids too. If you're packing them together, we're going to put some of these in this particular box. And what are these for? Why are we sending them? Why do we have to send menstrual products in shoe boxes? And that's quite a shocker as well, to find out for young children the situation in other countries. But a really good point of conversation. Finally, if you have other ideas for things that can help to normalize menstruation in our culture, I would love to hear them. And I would love it if you could drop them in the comments, even if you're not watching this video live. I would love to collect those, and I can share them later on. I think that that's all I had to say today, but I want to thank you very much for watching. I want to thank you for caring about this topic. I want to thank you for considering your own attitudes and the way that you speak about menstruation, not just for its effect on you personally and the girls around you, but also for your sisters all over the world. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm signing out, and I hope that you will have a fabulous day. Take care.